Hey, welcome to the exchange. In this video, I'll talk about the Polestar merger with the SPAC GGPI. Now, it should trade under the symbol PSNY starting Friday, June 24th, assuming the actual vote goes well. Also, look at too is Polestar's business strategy and overall financials going forward. But yeah, let's get started. So what I pulled up here is the actual Polestar press announcement, and really this fifth bullet here is actually an important one. So the transaction includes approximately USD 800 million of cash from the Gores Guggenheim Incorporated Trust account, basically the SPAC account itself, as well as $250 million in cash from PIPE financing, which PIPE, all it is private investment in public equity, so basically extra cash on top of the actual SPAC trust itself there too. But let's actually go to the actual slides real fast. This is really a better breakdown of what the actual SPAC actually entails. So again, 800 million SPAC in a trust, PIPE investor 250 million. Polestar rollover, basically all that means is kind of the it's almost like the current equity they have itself. It's 21 billion over there too. Really the important part is actually the pro forma valuation itself. So what they're saying right now is, hey, at $10 basically $10 share price per share, a little over 2 billion shares across the board. They're saying right now the total equity value is $21.2 billion. Now, if you minus out the cash itself, which is about $1.2 billion after all this is done, they're saying the enterprise value is roughly $20 billion right now. So, I mean, pretty good sized company overall, according to all these financials. So it's also important to look at the actual total basically ownership itself. So the bottom right hand corner, you see down here, Polestar rollover. This is basically current Polestar equity holders, basically current employees and executives, etc. 94.2% or so. SPAC holders were on 3.8%. PIPE investors, which again is private investment public equity, on 1.1%. The SPAC sponsors are on 0.9% overall. So I mean, really, the entire SPAC itself is only going to own about basically roughly 6% or so. The downside there is it's basically a very small free float in general. Now the free float will increase over time, over months, etc. But initially, this could be very, very volatile, both for the upside or the downside, because that free float's just not very big for the size of the company it is right now. So let's go to the very top of the slide deck. This is actually from the previous clip. The actual slide actually came from this deck itself. So this is the Polestar investor presentation, dated as of May 2022. But so I'll scroll down here really to slide 8. So Polestar, they've been around for a while. They're basically a Volvo spinoff itself. So they go back to the late 90s or so. They began as an EV company back in the 2015 timeframe. But even since 2020, they've launched the Polestar 1, they launched the Polestar 2, and they're really the future forward. They have the Polestar 3, 4, and 5 coming, and they're really scaling pretty fast. They're actually ahead of actual Lucid and Rivian on the kind of ramp up speed overall. So this is their overall product rundown and roadmap. So I mentioned earlier, they launched the Polestar 1 and Polestar 2. Those are already out. They're launching the Polestar 3. It's actually probably going to be calendar year 2023, so probably Q1 of 2023. Also launching the Polestar 4 in 2023 and Polestar 5 in 2024. Now, price points, they basically complement the Porsches itself. So the Polestar 3, roughly probably 80 to 90K or so. Polestar 4, a little bit cheaper, probably in 60 to 70K kind of range. And Polestar 5 is the ultra high end, probably 100K plus range. Now, one thing to note overall is Polestar 3, it should have autonomous driving capabilities. So it should have like a LiDAR. It builds on kind of the NVIDIA set and Waymo set itself. So we don't know quite what level it's going to be at overall, but it should be integrated in the Polestar 3. And I'm assuming the Polestar 4 and Polestar 5 as well. So this is their actual production ramp up itself. So 2021, they had launched 29,000 vehicles. Their goal in 2022 is to launch 50,000 vehicles. And by 2025, they want to be at 290,000 vehicles. So they are well ahead of Lucid and Rivian in those aspects. They're about a year or two ahead of them in the basic production ramp up timeline, which is fantastic. We'll see if the actual demand holds for Polestar, etc. But so far, ramp up production wise, they're doing very, very well. So another thing to point out here is actually Polestar is actually a joint venture between Volvo and Geely itself. But the most important thing to notice here is the actual manufacturing capabilities. So they actually lean on Geely, which is a Chinese-based auto manufacturer, for the actual manufacturing capabilities itself. So these are all mostly built within China itself. Think about opening a European manufacturing plant as well, but for right now, they're all in China. So costs are lower overall. And they also ramp up production-wise. So it could go a little bit faster than US-based companies. So this is an actual breakdown of the actual production sites themselves. So basically they're gigafactories. So Polestar 1 and Polestar 2, you're seeing really all basically built in China right now. Potential European production site there. Now Polestar 3, you will see some US-based production basically from Volvo facilities, etc. But again, the vast majority for the near future is going to be Chinese-based manufacturing, which is good in the sense that costs will be lower. The bad side there is obviously shipment costs from China to all around the world. So let's dig into the financials real fast. So this is the revenue, so $1.3 billion in 2021, which is very, very good. They're basically going to double that in 2022, looking at $2.5 billion. They're saying by 2025, $17.6 billion. So a pretty good, strong revenue growth rate overall. Now, gross profit is basically revenue minus cost of goods sold, basically the actual cost of building the car itself. You're saying it right here in 2021, it was basically 0%. They basically made no money, but basically broke even. They're saying 2022, $2.5 billion revenue. Saying a 0.3, which is $300 million gross profit. So roughly a 13% overall gross profit margin, which is very, very low, but for somebody ramping up, I mean, it's basically expected. They're saying, hey, by 2025, 2024 timeframe, should be roughly around 20%, which is kind of right where it should be at for an auto manufacturer. Now looking at EBIT margin, which EBIT is just earnings before interest and taxes. They're still very cash flow negative wise. I mean, $1 billion negative in 2021, $900 million in 2022. That should improve in 2023 according to their projections though, but we'll see how it turns out. So next thing I want to hit on is actually the CapEx, which CapEx stands for capital expenditures. It's basically investments you put in your manufacturing lines, manufacturing facilities, etc. So the thing to notice here is property, plant, and equipment. It's a darker shaded box. And this was in billions too. So in 2021, for PP&E, they spent $100 million, $400 million in 2022, $300 million in 2023. I mean, these are very, very small numbers for an auto manufacturer overall. So if you remember, I did a video on Lucid itself. So look at the Lucid CapEx in 2022. I mean, $2 billion, $2.1 billion, $2.5 billion. Also, I'll be sure to link this video up top if you want to check out on your own time as well too. But I mean, look at those numbers versus like Polestar. I mean, it's basically a quarter or a fifth the actual CapEx spending per year, which is, I mean, absolutely incredible. So if it actually holds and it actually becomes true, Polestar is a much better financial cash burn spot than than Lucid is. So finally, let's talk valuation real fast. So this is a breakdown they actually gave. This is TEV over 2023 estimated revenue, which TEV is just total enterprise value. So basically, had a various breakdown. Polestar, Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, XPeng, and NIO. Now, this is bad, I think, to compare Tesla and Polestar itself, because Tesla's a much higher overall gross profit margin itself, whereas Polestar is not quite heavily profitable overall too. That's why I don't like using revenue multiples on unprofitable companies though, just because the actual bottom line earnings are so vastly different. It's really hard to compare them on actual revenue basis itself. But if you go to the next slide, actually right here, you see that their estimated gross margins itself. I mean, even if everything goes well, I mean, Polestar is going to be at roughly a 20% gross margin rate, which really matches Lucid. It beats Rivian, as they're saying. It's actually less than NIO and XPeng overall there too. And Tesla is obviously a little bit more there too, because they have the strong software and AI kind of background overall too, which pushes gross margins a little bit higher than their industry peers. Now for valuation, what I would do is I would take the EBIT for 2025. So EBIT is earnings before interest and taxes, which right here is 1,340, and this is in millions. So all this means is $13.4 billion in 2025. What I would do is I would take that number and at most 10x it. So I'm saying right there, valuation roughly $13.4 billion today. Now, if you go back to the actual slide itself, look at enterprise value, and they're saying roughly $20 billion. So I think it's a little bit high. I mean, I would look more for the $13 billion size. So I see initial downside risk as being there. The thing was actually going to change though too, is actually seeing this pro forma ownership itself. I mean, it's an overall low float though too. So this thing can get very, very volatile too. So even then, at least the first month or two, the valuation honestly may not matter as much, but over the long term, I do see this coming down, especially closer to the December, January timeframe. Once the lockup expires, the actual shareholder base should increase dramatically, which should drop the price down quite a bit. Hey, but that's my thoughts on Polestar. I mean, be sure to drop in the comments below whether you're bullish or bearish. Also, if you're bullish too, whether you're going to invest now or wait till after lockup expires in December, January timeframe too. But if you like the content overall, be sure to sub a channel in the corner right there. Hey, appreciate all support. Overall too, if you have any ideas for new stock videos, new stock tips, etc., be sure to drop those in the comments as well too. But I really appreciate the support overall from the entire community. But yeah, until next time, that's the exchange.